We have some good news about Borderlands 3 this week from Gearbox CEO Randy Pitchford. Borderlands 3 will have no microtransactions. Awesome. What it will have is the ability to acquire cosmetics via small purchases. Hey folks, this is Riker with a gaming news wrap-up video where we discuss the happenings of the week. This week's topics include a dismal outlook for Activision Blizzard stock, Epic Games outright buying Rocket League's developer to bring the game to the Epic Games Store, a public apology from the developers of Path of Exile, and more. As always, discussion timestamps can be found in the video description, but right before we jump ahead, just a quick reminder to ring that sub-notification bell to be alerted of new Saturday episodes. Now before we go on, I'd just like to take a quick minute for a word from this video's sponsor, ExpressVPN, whom we've spoken about before. A VPN helps protect your privacy. I turn it on whenever I want to hide my IP address. And of course, I also use it to access geographically restricted content. I'm sure many of you ARPG fans remember Lost Ark and all the big hype around it, and a lot of you were wondering, how are these streamers managing to play the game? It's only in Korea. Well, the answer is VPNs. You spoof an IP from Korea and you're able to play, and this applies to other games as well. Anytime you need to access a certain server that you can't access unless you are from that region, well, you can be from whatever region you want with a VPN, particularly ExpressVPN, which can spoof an IP from 94 different countries. So if you do find yourself connecting to a foreign game server, then with ExpressVPN you'll be guaranteed a fast and stable connection. And it's super easy to use. Just one click and you're connected, or if you need to change location, a couple more clicks, but it's still really easy. It costs less than $7 a month with a 30-day money-back guarantee. And you can find out how to get 3 months free by clicking the link in the video description, expressvpn.com/Riker. In our first topic this week, Psyonix, the developer of Rocket League, has been acquired by Epic. The PC version of Rocket League will be coming to the Epic Games Store by the end of 2019. And at first, when this was announced, there was some confusion about whether this meant that there would be no more Rocket League on Steam. Since then, Epic has clarified that there are no announced plans to stop selling Rocket League on Steam after the game comes to the Epic Games Store. Now, do note that is different from saying that it will not happen. They're just saying they haven't announced that it will happen. So ultimately, we don't know. It's possible, and probably even likely, that Rocket League in the future will no longer be purchasable through Steam, but if you own it on Steam, I'm sure you'll still be able to keep it. But regardless, as a consequence to this news, Rocket League is being review bombed on Steam. And honestly, my greatest concern about Rocket League coming to the Epic Games Store, and if that is the case, if it's no longer able to be acquired on Steam, what's going to happen to the modding scene? Because the Steam Workshop offers a lot of modding options for Rocket League, and currently the Epic Games Store does not have any support for that kind of stuff. So I certainly hope that we do see, especially given Epic Games' strong history of modding in games, for instance in Unreal Tournament series, I certainly hope we see a similar feature come to the Epic Games Store, because my main thing is I want customers to have choice, and I want the platform to have the same features that customers want. The Steam Workshop is a very robust feature of the Steam Store, and I think it would be a great idea to bring something similar to the Epic Games Store so that people can keep creating and appreciating mods. On to our next topic here. The Sonic the Hedgehog movie trailer was revealed this week, and just from this still, he looks horrifying. There was a huge outrage on the internet, lots of mocking, and basically Paramount was shamed into doing something about it. Gotta give big kudos to director Jeff Fowler. He took to Twitter and he said, "Thank you for the support and the criticism. The message is loud and clear. You aren't happy with the design and you want changes. It's going to happen. Everyone at Paramount and Sega are fully committed to making this character the best he can be." I really gotta give props to Fowler here. Given how bad the criticism was, he came across very polite, and for Paramount to be willing to undertake this, because to redo all of the CGI scenes, rebuild the model, redo the rigging, re-render everything, and they have 5-6 months before the movie releases. This is going to cost a lot of money. In fact, there's a conspiracy theory going around that this was all a publicity stunt, that they've always had the good-looking model ready on standby. They made this awful trailer in order to have this feel-good story where they come out looking like the heroes. There's no evidence to suggest that this is the case, but it's a fun theory. On to some Borderlands 3 news. This week we had a live stream and a gameplay video emerge. We got 17 solid minutes of gameplay. You can check out that video on YouTube. It's some footage showcasing the beginning of the game, featuring the character Amara the Siren. Some new features to the Borderlands series include sliding, climbing, destructible cover. And some additional good news is that it appears to be sticking to the roots of Borderlands. You can play the game offline. There's no always online live service requirement. They're not trying to be like Destiny 2. It very much looks like they're attempting to remain consumer friendly. Now, unfortunately, while this is all good news, Randy Pitchford, while talking about all this and the monetization model, happened to ad-lib a couple words and say something he probably shouldn't have. He mentioned that the game will have no microtransactions. Now, in the greater context of his paragraph, what he meant was that there will be no predatory microtransactions. Nothing like in free-to-play games where you have premium currency, where you have loot boxes. But it made it seem like he was saying, there's not going to be any microtransactions, you're just going to be able to buy things for little amounts of money. And what he just meant was it'll be the same way things have been in the Borderlands series. In Borderlands 2, for instance, there's a whole bunch of little DLC packs that you can get with cosmetics and whatnot. But initially this started to be reported in such a way that it seemed like Pitchford was either contradicting himself or lying or trying to mislead. And in response, he went on a huge Twitter rant. He sent out dozens of angry and emotional tweets about how he was being misinterpreted. He was telling people to unfollow him on Twitter. He called out Game Informer for being clickbait and for screwing him over. He told one person, "Screw you very much, you semantically pedantic troll." He said he was blocking people. And as you explore through it, as you read through this rant, it starts to take a much sadder turn as he starts to express how he is hurt by constantly being painted as the bad guy. He's hurt that an outlet that he respects greatly, like Game Informer, would do this to him. And he's hurt because he allegedly has fought very hard for years to keep loot boxes and premium currency out of Borderlands 3 when Suits were trying to implement it into the game. Since then, it's been clarified that Borderlands 3 will have no pay-to-win microtransactions, no loot boxes, no premium currency, but rather big campaign DLC and additional cosmetics. Again, basically the same as in Borderlands 2. And if you go back and listen to the presentation and hear exactly what Pitchford said, it's pretty clear he wasn't lying. It's clear that he had no intention to mislead. He just chose his words poorly when he ad-libbed saying that there would be no microtransactions in a manner that gave the appearance that he was just immediately contradicting himself. But the bigger thing here is that rather than just put out a message of, oops, I shouldn't have said no microtransactions, he went on a Twitter meltdown, which just called more attention to the whole thing. On to some Activision Blizzard news. This week, the company had its first quarter calendar 2019 results conference call. This is when they have this, effectively a business meeting with their investors, and they relay information on how the quarter has gone financially and what the outlook is for the future. And as it turns out, that forecast for the future is not looking very good. After examining the results, highly rated Wall Street analyst Todd Junger said that the results were, quote, very alarming, as reported by MarketWatch. Quote, the truly alarming news is the ubiquitous, often sharp declines in monthly active users and revenue metrics across every franchise except for King. This is something people often forget. Within the umbrella of Activision Blizzard, we have Activision, we have Blizzard Entertainment, and we also have King, the makers of Candy Crush. Junger said that Blizzard monthly active users hit their lowest level since the first quarter of 2016, as the company faced competition for key titles like Overwatch. Now, another analyst, Timothy O'Shea, has a more positive outlook for the future. Quote, everything at Activision seems to be working except Blizzard, which won't launch a major new game until 2020. But with the biggest content pipeline in company history, the lack of new games looks like a short-term problem. Now also this week came the news that Blizzard will not have a presence at Gamescom this year. This came as a bit of a surprise because Blizzard generally does have a presence and will make announcements there. For instance, Diablo 3 Reaper of Souls expansion was revealed at Gamescom. Now Blizzard has previously said that 2019 was meant to be a big year for Diablo news, so it seems like they're saving everything for BlizzCon, unless we're just going to see sporadic reveals throughout the year. They do mention that the reason for there being no presence at Gamescom is because they are focusing on development. Doing these shows, including BlizzCon, takes a lot of resources. It's time they have to pull developers or otherwise members of teams off of their day-to-day work in order to prep for these conventions. It certainly came as a surprise for me because I was expecting there to be some Diablo-related reveal at Gamescom, given that the implication seemed to be that we would be getting Diablo news throughout the year, not just next BlizzCon. On to some quick last Epoch news. The upcoming action RPG has now entered beta. It was about a year ago that it finished its Kickstarter and launched into alpha, and they are still on track for their April 2020 release date. I've put out a video now with my impressions of the beta. Do be sure to check that out. On to some Path of Exile news. The father of the game, Chris Wilson, has posted a lengthy message on Reddit that is at once an apology and an explanation for what's been going on. Quote, "It doesn't take much reading of the official forums or subreddit to realize that a group of Path of Exile players are angry about a number of topics and feel that we haven't given solid answers about how we're going to address these issues. We will explain as many of these topics as we can in the Q&A that is currently scheduled for later this week," which did end up happening. However, one thing that the Q&A doesn't address is how we got here. I wanted to personally post an explanation of what has been going on behind the scenes at Grinding Gear Games that led to this state. He goes on to explain that Synthesis League was a lot more work than expected. Quote, "We fully acknowledge that it is not our best league and is not up to the quality standards that Path of Exile players should expect from us. It will not be merged into the core game in 3.7. 3.7, by the way, which will be revealed in 3 weeks, will have an emphasis put on repeatable fun." Wilson went on to explain all the extra work that developers are putting in to get Path of Exile 4.0 ready. That's the next version of the game that's slated to compete with the next generation of action RPGs. Also, now this year they have ExileCon, and as we just explained before, prepping for these conventions is a huge amount of work. And they also have the Korean launch of Path of Exile, so there's been a lot going on that has been occupying the developers' time. Wilson went on to say, quote, "A big topic in the gaming industry recently is development crunch. Some studios make their teams work 14-hour days to pack every patch full of the most fixes and improvements possible. Sometimes when we read our own patch notes threads and community feedback, we feel that we are being asked to do the same. I will not run this company that way. While there's inevitably a bit of optional paid overtime near league releases, the vast majority of a Path of Exile development cycle has great work-life balance. This is necessary to keep our developers happy and healthy for the long term, but it does mean that some game improvements will take a while to be made." The more I learn about GGG, the more I love these guys. That is such a good attitude to have. The industry is plagued by overworking employees. If you compare two equivalent jobs, one in the video game industry, one in the general tech sector, most of the time, that tech sector job is going to be paid more and require fewer hours. And the reason is that it's supposed to be fun to work on video games. It should be your dream job, your passion project. You should just be happy doing what you love to do. And I've seen some gamers even defend it this way. That, well, that's just the price of having a fun job. Gamers, when we're the ones who are going to indirectly suffer, even if you don't want to take the empathetic angle of people being overworked, what do you think is going to happen to a game when developers are being overworked, when they're burning out? Do you think that's going to give us better games? Do you think making it less encouraging for people to go into the industry is a way to get better games? Scaring talent off to work in other sectors? At your job, whatever it may be, do you do your best work when your working conditions are making you miserable? In other Path of Exile news here, Again, we had part 1 of that Q&A happen this week. I'll drop a link to that if you want to read through it, but I want to highlight a couple things, and one was a question about repeating content. Quote, as a player who wants to delve and only delve, is there any way to reduce the reliance on mapping to access delve content? GGG replied, the honest answer here is that we believe that game systems like delve will become boring if you have unlimited access to them. And so it's important to limit their access by requiring regular PoE play between sessions of special content. Now I want to get your opinion on that, folks. Is this a case of the developer having a better idea of what is best for the player than the player? Do you agree that too much of a good thing will burn you out on that thing, or do you just want the liberty to make your own choices and do whatever you want? Sound off in the comments. The other question from the Q&A that I wanted to highlight was someone was asking whether GGG is revising their stance on trading. Basically, trading in PoE is rather cumbersome. You have to use external websites, you have to whisper players, there's no in-game auction house or really anything that the game does to facilitate trading, and that's by design. They feel that trading needs to be cumbersome because if you make it too easy, well, it just ruins everything. For instance, in Diablo 3, when it had the auction house, the most effective way to make your character become as powerful as possible by getting the best gear as possible was not by actually playing the game, but by playing the auction house, buying and selling. Again, a much faster way to acquire the gold needed to buy the items you need to be as powerful as possible than just playing 24 hours a day hoping for the best drops. But if you make trading more difficult and less efficient than with an auction house, then, well, you have more people playing the game than the auction house. That said, there's a strong segment of the community in Path of Exile that feels that trading needs to be made easier. They're saying that they're actually burning out on the game mid-league or early in a league because the trading is too cumbersome and annoying. So this is something that a significant segment of players feel very strongly about that GGG does not seem willing to budge on. And I turn the question to you. Do you think trading is fine as it is, or would you appreciate it being addressed in some way? Sound off in the comments. On to some Diablo 3 news. As a reminder, Season 16 ends on Sunday, May 12th. We don't yet have a start date for Season 17, but it's possible that it'll be revealed some point between the time I record this and when the video goes live, so do check out for some text on screen right now, or possibly a comment in the YouTube video description, because we are expecting a Season 17 start by the end of May. And lastly, I just wanted to call your attention to a forum post by community manager Nevelistis, in which, among other things, she asks, what skill would you like to see have more support? Is there one with a great fantasy or flavor you like, but doesn't have much power behind it? Is there a class fantasy you feel isn't very fulfilled right now? Something you really want to be able to do with a class, but just isn't possible. So to me, it looks like she is scouting out potential future balance changes to make in upcoming seasons. For instance, this season we're seeing the emergence of a rapid fire build, thanks to buffs to supplementary items. So it looks like we can expect more builds to emerge in future seasons, which very much surprises me. I just have my fingers crossed that the Pony Satyr could come back, and I turn the question to you, what builds, either old builds, would you like to see return, or what new builds would you like to see emerge? I'm sure someone's going to say zombie bears. And that's going to wrap up this video. But do be sure to have checked out last week's video, in which we discuss the step forward that Blizzard is taking in supporting modding. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch, Patreon, and now YouTube supporters for making these videos possible. If you like what you see on this channel and want to support the creation of more content, you can consider supporting on Patreon or YouTube and unlocking behind-the-scenes content. If you enjoyed this video, please share it, check out these other videos, and subscribe to join Rikers Raiders for more gaming content.